So this episode looks at how my guest has built a career from the ground up. She talks about this idea of being in the room, putting yourself in the right places, asking for opportunities and backing yourself even when you're not sure you're ready. We look at where that comes from, growing up in Wales in a small working class village, Gleneath, not feeling like the obvious person to succeed. Today's guest is Julie Gardner, MBE, an award-winning TV producer. Julie's career started at the BBC as a secretary on the TV show Our Friends in the North. She's been responsible for, with her partner Jane Tranter, for really putting Wales television on the map. I really hope you enjoy the show. So, Julie Gardner,
Hello.
welcome. Welcome to my Best Life podcast.
Excellent.
I am really excited to have you here. Now, we had a debate about whether you're living your best life. I observe you and see you are, but we're going to unpack that today.
We're going to prod at it. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to go around that. What I didn't know is you're an MBE.
Yes, I am an
I probably
MBE.
wouldn't have invited you on if I'd known you were an MBE because you'd have been too powerful and important for me. But fortunately, I didn't know, so we're here.
We are here.
And then by the time I did my research, I'm like, oh my Lord.
Have I never told you that before? I mean, it's not something that really comes up often, in truth.
Well,
We're
going into that one because you've told me.
I've actually got the medal in my knicker drawer at home. Yeah, it used to be.
Why your knicker drawer?
I don't really know. I think, well, it's where my passports are. I probably shouldn't be saying this because if we get robbed now, it's all from this
Can we give away
this
your address
moment.
today as
No,
well?
yeah, we'll stop there.
Yeah,
So
fair
my dad had the MBE for a while. He's now dead, but he kept it.
God, he must have been proud. Can you imagine how
Do you know,
proud he was?
he was proud. It was weird because, as I'm sure we'll come on to, I grew up in Wales in a small village, working class. My parents were not particularly into the royals. And so when I was offered the MBE, there was a moment where I thought, oh, should I do this? And then I thought about my dad, who was widowed, and I thought it would be a huge thing for him. So I don't know why I thought that, because, as I said, the royal family wasn't a big thing, but it did feel like a marker of a journey that he would particularly like.
I mean, it's huge. It's huge.
Why I got an MBE was services to the Welsh television industry. When I was head of drama at BBC Wales for like a 7-year period, it was a monumental turnaround in the fortunes of Welsh-based production.
I mean, what you've done for Wales, it's beyond, even down to your production company, Bad Wolf. Production company, the correct terminology?
Yeah, production company, which I co-founded with Jane Tranter 10 years ago. It just had its anniversary.
Yeah, and only today did I look at your facilities there. Oh my Lord!
Yeah,
and then the
pretty
size,
special, massive.
The size is huge.
Yeah.
It's as big as is it Pinewood? I think it's as big as Pinewood, or
yeah,
one of the big ones.
It was an abandoned factory, and there are 6+ stages there. It's where we've had the TARDIS set maintained, so we can run multiple productions there. It's where the trading floor for industry is built, and then a lot of swing sets.
So obviously, Best Life. That's the key today. It's not been easy to get here, so I really want to explore that.
And I think the common assumption with film or TV is it's glamorous, because the outward-facing film, TV world is award shows or press or launching a show. But actually, the behind the scenes is very unglamorous. It's long hours. It's sometimes cold locations. It's setbacks. It's not having enough money for a production.
You've talked about some of the shows that you're in, that you've done already series with, and then you can't progress with them, and the frustration of that. So it's tough. But just going back, let's go to the younger you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a small village called Gleneath in South Wales, working class family, working class village. We didn't have very much money, so if you're not into sport or going out, within the town, it was really, I can remember riding my bike a lot, and I can remember really the thing I did relentlessly was one, watch TV, because we weren't really doing much beyond that because we didn't have the money to do very much. So I was watching TV and I was reading. Those were the two things. And I was an only child. My parents were older parents. They had had me in their mid-30s, which in that time was quite rare. You know, they'd been married at the age of 21. So it took them a long time. I had a grandmother. So I was around older people a lot, in a very small bungalow. And my way out into the world was through TV and books. I was definitely never the cool kid. I was never good at sport, and I was always the last person on the bench for netball. And I liked being on the bench. I never really wanted to play, but I was also never picked. And socially, I was crushingly shy when I was a kid. That changed at about 11. And I can really remember at 11 thinking, I'm going to stop being shy now. It was a really conscious decision that I remember thinking, I'm only damaging myself. No one really cares. There was this blistering moment of revelation of, actually, no one's that interested in you. So why are you so worried about how people think of you? Because I remember it was moving from primary school to secondary school.
So you had a chance to almost reinvent yourself in secondary school, saying, right, I'm not going to be that, I'm going to be something else.
Yeah, and I was still the kind of retiring academic swotty type. You know, it was not like suddenly I was an Olympian at netball or partying. I was still very interior, but the shyness went.
And you were super focused at your work. Obviously, that's where you felt that was your sort of your thing. And then sort of going through from there, you were offered a place at Cambridge, which was interesting. And
then missed it.
You missed it,
Missed it because I didn't get the right grades.
Yeah.
Which I think, I don't know, you never know, do you? But I think that was probably a good thing because I ended up retaking my A-levels and I got to London University.
For the Cambridge place, you were telling me that you'd heard someone else had been put forward and you hadn't been put forward. You hadn't been suggested that maybe you should go to Cambridge.
My English literature teacher, I had discovered, had suggested to another student that they do the Oxbridge exam. And when I heard this, I went to that teacher and said, well, why haven't you suggested me? Now, I look back at that moment and I don't really recognize that kid. I don't know where that came from. That didn't come from home. That didn't come from any recognizable place to have, I guess, the courage or the arrogance. You can define it any which way, but the courage or the determination somewhere to say, well, if that other student's good enough, I'm good enough.
Yeah, I mean, courage and determination. So the fact that you were at an early age up for asking, and part of success and part of getting on is asking and being prepared to take the no. And a lot of people are not able to do that. And it's actually a skill you can develop or a muscle you can develop by actually just saying, I'm just going to ask. And it's something I struggle with it definitely, asking for things. Ask. I think that is a key point. And then what was interesting, you didn't get into Cambridge.
No.
Now, a lot of people would have then just gone on to the offers you had, even though you wanted to leave your hometown, Gleneath, you actually stayed for another year.
Yeah, so I got the offer to go to Cambridge, and then this catastrophe happened, which is I didn't get the right A-level grades.
So you couldn't get in.
Which I can remember because at that time they used to post the results on a wall at the school and everyone would gather. You know, there was no email to get your results.
I remember those times, yeah.
And I can remember people around me being really shocked by the results I got. But anyway, the important thing was in the aftermath, my teachers and my parents were suggesting, oh, take a different placement, go somewhere else. There are other universities or polytechnics that you can go to. And I was really certain that I was going to retake my A-levels. There was never a question about it. And I think people were worried that was I frightened to go or what was going on there, because if it wasn't needed to redo, but I just wasn't happy with myself. I wasn't happy with the results. I wasn't happy that somehow I had squashed my opportunity. And so I did stay for another year. And then the irony was I got straight A's, but by that point I didn't have a Cambridge offer. So I went
Yeah.
to London.
Yeah, I mean, again, sort of for me, the fact that you failed, but you just went back and did it again, I think that's a critical point. Is with another
Right.
year out of your life, quite a year at 18 is very long. As you get older, you don't feel a year so much, but in that, and so I think that just that I'm going again, that dogged determination. So then, okay, so you went through, and then you ended up. I'm going to have to sort of miss some stories, otherwise this is going to be a 3-hour podcast. But you end up working at the BBC. So I'm going to jump
Yes.
forward into
So
to that point.
I did very quickly. I ended up. I thought I was going to be an academic. So that was my path because it was always books that were the thing that I thought would be my way to a different life. And I did an MA in Renaissance Studies, which was completely impractical for the job market. And I thought I was going to do a PhD and be an academic, and I wasn't good enough. I didn't feel I was good enough. I would get bored in the library. I'd get distracted. There was like an assignment given where I thought I had done it brilliantly and I hadn't. I'd misunderstood it. And I thought, oh, actually, there's going to be brackets around me in this field. This is not for me. And throughout that time, I was obsessed by TV. So as a student, I was also still always watching TV. My social life had got much better than my younger years, in London particularly. But I was still loving TV. And my brain, because I'd read so much, I was really a storyteller. And my brain was very wide. You know, even in the English literature I was doing, even while I was doing Chaucer studies, it was still always the narrative. I was always thinking in stories. And then I was able to get a job at the BBC at the very kind of, you know, entry level
As an assistant.
secretary was the word at the time.
And I heard you were pretty rubbish.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
truly
no,
terrible.
that's the
I
word.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, really terrible. I'm not even saying that for it to be a funny
No,
anecdote.
it's
I
just
was
that's yeah.
genuinely terrible because I didn't know anything about TV. They should never have employed me, but they did. And marvelously, because I was the assistant to the producer, I was sitting next to the fax machine. And the writer, the show was Our Friends in the North, which, you know, for the UK was a seminal show for the BBC at the time. You know, it launched the careers of Gina McKee, Chris Eccleston, Daniel Craig, Mark Strong. I mean, it was
huge.
and it was a really big
Yeah.
production for the BBC at that point. And I was sitting next to the fax machine, and the writer, Peter Flannery, was rewriting episode 1. They were well into filming and they had some problems with episode 1. And these rewrites would come to me. And because I knew nothing, he would phone to check on whether the producer had the rewrites. And we would have a conversation about the script pages. And I'd give him notes. So then when the producer, because I didn't know any better, and then when the producer would come back, Charlie Pattinson, and say, has Peter delivered the pages? He'd be absolutely bewildered because I'd say, oh, yes, but he's doing some more work because we had a chat. It's completely outside of the job description of the assistant.
But obviously, clearly, this is your talent because scripts is your thing,
Oh,
and that's
completely.
what's.
And I love that. And, you know, as a first job in television, it was amazing because the edit, everything was, the production office, locations, everything was on one floor. So you got to see everything and you were interacting with everything. So it was a sheep dip. It was a really fast entry into the mechanics, the process, the job of television. But I instantly gravitated to the scripts and the writers.
And then that progressed, and then jumping forward 205.
Yeah. 205 was a big year.
That was
for
a big
me.
year for you. That was when you really. It was the beginning of everything.
Yeah,
right?
and I can see a little theme in asking for things. So at the time, I was working at London Weekend Television, and one of the shows I was working on was Casanova, which was written by Russell T Davies, based on the massive tome of autobiography. And that I had these brilliant scripts. You know, Russell T Davies is an
I mean, he's a legend.
extraordinary writer, and I had these amazing scripts as a young producer, and I couldn't get them made. They had been developed for ITV, and ITV loved the scripts. They could see the quality of them, but they were really worried about their older audience and how would all this sex play and what would it be. And at that point, I got headhunted, or I got approached to interview at the BBC for a new head of drama at BBC Wales position. They were trying to fill the post, and I didn't really want the job. I certainly wasn't qualified for the job. I knew that the fact they'd reached out to me meant they were in trouble because I was not qualified. And it was it was the most gorgeous experience I had of job interviews because I didn't want the job. So there was a freedom.
Yeah, you're just sitting there just having a chat.
Yeah, and even though I was just going in for a chat, I watched everything they'd ever made. I went in with notes and notes of thoughts on everything. God knows what they thought I was doing.
Did you take over the interview?
Pretty much.
Pretty much better than
Yeah,
just
pretty much.
told them.
Yeah. And so they offered me the job, and my now business partner, Jane Tranter, was my last meeting. I'd never met her. She was running all fiction at the BBC, so film, comedy, drama, the whole thing, acquisitions. And I got the job, but I got the job saying to her, well, I can't possibly come unless you find a way to make Casanova. I can't leave those scripts behind, and they're stuck at ITV. And so even then, I was asking for something, and the BBC was able to take those scripts from ITV. You know,
Would they buy them?
passed.
How does it work?
Yeah, they would have bought them.
them.
So it would have been ITV would have formally passed, and then they picked them up and paid the development costs, and went into production for the BBC.
And then that's for you. That was the beginning of the big future for you, for Wales and everything.
Yes, it was. So that was either 2003 or 4, because Doctor Who was on air in 2005. And that's where I had really met my match, because Jane Tranter is a genius and an extraordinary.
What's her skill? You know, because obviously you guys are partners. So how does that? What are the two skills you guys have?
Well, she's an amazing. She's brilliant on scripts, or all of the things you'd want to be as a creative producer. But she's a great strategist and a great thinker and a great long-term planner in a way that I don't think I am. And this is where she outclassed me, because I can remember going to my first meeting with her as the new head of drama Wales with my little book of ideas. And she listened really politely to all of them and then said, how would you feel about working on Doctor Who? And it was literally a lightning bolt moment, because I knew what was happening. It was at the time, and this is still true for the BBC, is the BBC as a public service broadcaster has to give voice to all parts of the UK, all the nations and regions. And at that time, you know, Scotland was doing very well with Monarch of the Glen. Northern Ireland was doing well with Ballycus Angel. England was fine. And Wales had a lot of regional success, so local programming, but nothing that was national. And Doctor Who was the beginning, really, of that journey.
And that was a huge success. I mean, obviously, Christopher Eccleston, Billy Piper,
David Tennant then. That show has now been running for 20 years.
And all the spin-offs as well.
Torchwood, the Sarah Jane Adventures, we made Doctor Who Confidential, a behind-the-scenes show that created an absolute explosion in job creation in Wales, because it was finally people could see the job of television and the different roles that could be sought in production. So I still meet people, you know, today that are working in the industry because they saw those shows.
So tell me about the MBE. I'm quite interested to know about. So when was that 2014? Did that happen, the MBE?
I can remember when I found out. Because,
were you here in LA? Because obviously you know from
I was in LA, but I was filming in Vancouver.
Right.
And this sounds like something you make up for the joke of it, but it is true. I was in a tiny toilet, you know, one of those portaloos on set, and it was cold, so I had loads of layers, and I obviously still had my phone. And my phone rang, and it was my then boyfriend, now husband, phoning to say I couldn't resist. I opened this letter, because when you get informed, obviously it comes in this very formal letter with the embossed,
Yeah.
Her Majesty's government. So he'd opened it, which he was very open about saying, confessing, and we were just laughing. And I was in this toilet just laughing.
And you actually said it was an out-of-body experience going through the
Yes.
process.
So Russell T Davies, who is a writer that I've worked a lot with on Doctor Who and Casanova and Torchwood, or a whole, he's an enormous influence in my life. I think he and Jane Tranter are the two pillars of what my career became. He had an OBE, and he called me and he said, right, you have to prepare yourself. It's going to be very weird. You're used to doing public things. This is really strange, the experience of it. And it's very lovely and meaningful. It's also a bit silly. It's so well run. It's like one of the best productions I've ever seen. So you're driven into Buckingham Palace. You have a choice about where it goes. So obviously I went for the main event. So you're taken into Buckingham Palace, and you're allowed some guests, and you're immediately elegantly separated from your guests. They go, down the path of where, they're going to have apple juice and be told where to sit, and you're taken up these stairs into this extraordinary room where everyone's waiting, and people are hyper in a whisper, because everyone's very polite, obviously, because it's a big deal. But everyone, you can feel there's an energy in the room. Everyone's very hyper and very scared. And then you wait for your name to be called, and you're guided through these multiple state rooms into where they do this ceremony. And there's an orchestra, a chamber orchestra is playing on a balcony, and all your guests are seated. It's so well arranged. So you're told you're checked every room you go in. Your name is checked, because they want to make sure that you're in the right order. And I can remember you stand at a door, so you're watching people go ahead of you, like it's so choreographed. And then you're tapped lightly on the shoulder, and you're told to walk forward. But you do a curtsy, you step forward, and for me it was Prince William. And you shake hands, and as he's pinning the thing on the medal on your chest, and he has two questions, which of course was about Doctor Who. And then he nods, which is your cue that you have to back out. But you have to back out without turning your back on him.
Facing him.
And then off you go.
Off you go.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, how does it feel?
It felt quite moving to see my father, because he loved it. And the thing that I really appreciated, the producer in me, is they sell videos. And when the video comes, it is a thing of madness.
Is it good? Good quality?
It's incredibly good, because what you are completely unaware of is every room has a camera.
Wow, okay.
And the whole thing is edited to you. So everyone else is, the hordes are cut out of it. Everything is edited to your entry. It's so well done. And your guests.
I want to see that. Are you one of those people that actually listening or watching yourself, you find excruciating? Is that
not always? Most of the time, yes. I think isn't that true?
Everyone
just about
struggles.
everyone.
Everyone struggles, yeah. Everyone struggles on that one.
But that I could only watch once, because it just didn't feel like me. It's not me. That's not a world I will likely ever be in again.
Going further, you got recognised by BAFTA recently. Again, services to Wales, to Welsh television.
Yes, that
which
was
is
nice.
Beautiful.
That was nice. That was an outstanding achievement award, which again harks back to all those years as head of drama at BBC Wales, and how that industry was kick-started. Because it's 20 years later, we have Bad Wolf on the ground, which is an absolute engine of job creation for Wales, and sustained job creation. So when Jane and I set up Bad Wolf 10 years ago, our initial funding was a repayable loan from the Welsh Government. And part of that were metrics for job creation, because what the Welsh Government, Creative Industries Wales, had realised was, like many places around the world, they will encourage a production to come into a region with grants. But once that shoot is over, the circus packs up. And what Bad Wolf was about was a meaningful, national, global production company that could be selling at that level and have sustained job creation. So 10
Yeah,
years
continued.
later,
Yeah, yeah.
and our roots in the community are very, very deep. So we're very kind of firmly attached to something called SOAR, which is Screen Alliance Wales, which is a massive training enterprise for the industry.
And then, so one of the things you were saying about you as a personality is you're not really reflective or looking back. You just keep on plowing forward, and just with everything, you're always looking ahead, always looking ahead.
I think so. I mean, I don't know. Does anyone truly know themselves? That's my sense of myself. I don't think in my career I've ever had a very clear plan. I knew I wanted to work in TV.
In the waiting, you decided that you were going to further build and develop yourself. And that's, I think, again, why have you become so successful when many people don't? It's about going the extra mile, doing more, equipping yourself. And I think that obviously for me says a lot.
Yes, so I mean that's an interesting point. So I had finished my MA in London. There was a recession. I couldn't get a job. I didn't have any skills. I'd just done a Renaissance Studies MA. Who cared? So I was forced to go home. By a lucky fluke, I got a job as a lecturer in a further education college in the Rhondda Valley. I loved it, but it was also part-time work because I was just teaching a handful of classes. And so in that time, that's when I went to my local village community center and learned some computer skills and some typing skills. And during that time, that was probably one of the big crossroads in my life because I really loved lecturing and I had a nice life and I could easily have just stayed doing that. And something somewhere was calling me to television. I was still watching loads of it. I was, fiction, drama. And I was doing those courses with an eye the whole time, right from the beginning of the lecturing job, with an eye to thinking, if I want to get back to London, if I want to get into television, I need to get practical. And I was able, through a friend who was working at the BBC in a very different part of the BBC, I was able to apply and I became an assistant.
So again, it's looking ahead, thinking what you need to do. But would you see yourself as a visionary? Are you that person that can really sort
Oh,
of,
I'd love to be that person. It sounds very grand, doesn't it? I'd love to be that person, but I don't think I am a visionary at all. I think it's a bit more pedestrian for me, I think. I'm extremely hardworking, and I think that's something Jane Tranter and I have in common. I often laugh with her that it's her Methodist background, and for me, it's my working class roots. My parents always worked really hard, particularly my mother. So when my dad lost his job in the factory, they pooled the redundancy money, one for our first foreign holiday, and secondly, they bought a little corner shop. And it never really made any money, but it sustained them through my late teen years because they were really struggling at that moment. And I saw how hard they had to work.
so that was just naturally within
Yeah,
you, the
I mean, they
graft.
were. My mum was always a doer. Like women of that generation. Like my mother-in-law is staying with me right now. She cannot sit still. She is constantly cleaning. It's just hardwired into people, I think, of that generation. So I saw that. I saw the struggle. So I was always the person that had to, on any job I was on, if I felt I wasn't working the hardest of everyone, then that would be a failure. And I think that has led to success for me, without question. I think it's also led to a kind of overbalance and over reliance on work. I'm always fascinated by people that can work smart, not hard. That's not something that comes
It's just
naturally
not.
to
I think
me.
it's just like a personality type, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, just where that's who you are. But also, if you think about working in a team, when the leader is working at a level, it does tend to push everyone in that
I
direction.
don't know. I think yes. I think more so than not. I think it can also leave people behind.
Right.
I think there is a danger of that. And I think there's definitely been times in my career where people have been left behind because they haven't been able to keep up or haven't wanted to keep up. I definitely ask less of everyone else than I ask of myself, without question. That's always been the case. I'm harder on myself than I'm on anyone else that I work with.
I can imagine.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, to the point where it needs a bit of sorting out, I
Yeah.
think.
So there's a lot of people do work and they're working and working and working and they're not getting there and they're not making it. Now, one of the stories I heard was that you were at the Edinburgh Edinburgh Film Festival or a
Yeah,
festival in
TV
Edinburgh, yeah,
festival.
TV festival in
Yeah,
Edinburgh, and you're in there in the sort of social networking area and you're just on your own, just felt
yeah,
uncomfortable and
yeah,
felt lonely and all of those things. And then a mere 3 years later, you go back and you're right in the center of
yeah,
things because of obviously your
yeah.
success. Can you just tell me about the gap between the two? Because obviously there's a lot of people, they're doing the work and thinking, I'm just not getting my success. And then that huge change from you just being on your own to suddenly you're in the center of things. And people can become an overnight success 10 or 12 or 15 years later, if you know what I mean. Suddenly it just all comes together. What happened in that gap between the two? Was that a long year's preparation? Was it a bit of luck came along, or what was
I think
that?
it,
What
I
was that
think
change?
there was a bit of luck, but it was also just maturing in the work.
Yeah.
So the first time I went to the Edinburgh TV Festival, I was a script editor, which I still think is one of the best jobs in television. So you're working with a writer, you're crafting a story, you're working with production on, some of the nuts and bolts that are needed in the realization of the stories, where my narrative, my book reading comes in. And you've got a lot of influence in that job without the power that you have as a producer or the responsibility you have as a producer. And so a lot of script editors would go to Edinburgh because you're looking for new talent on the fringe. But, when you're in the hotel bar, no one really knows or cares about you because you haven't got the relationships at that point. Unless one of the writers you're working with is there, you're not established enough. And I can really remember that feeling of being in the middle of that world and being completely alone and ignored. And it's horrible. Like everyone's been there. And then whenever it was 2, 3 years later, by that point, I was a producer. By that point, I had shows. By that point, I had relationships. Yes, I was in the middle of things. It was very, very different experience.
And we mentioned a lot, by the way. I mean, I don't think you do, and I don't. We have lucky breaks,
Yeah.
but my dad used to call it a preparation meeting opportunity. So there's doing the work, you do the
Yeah.
work, and then the opportunity
Yeah.
can show
Yeah.
itself. And then, so that's the lucky bit, where actually you are, in my opinion, destined to get there just through your sheer continued hard work.
I never felt destined. I like that. I like the description, but it never feels like that, does it? And I don't know. I think a lot of people in this industry can't quite settle on the last success they had because it's essentially a freelance culture.
It's tough, like.
And I think it's like I feel my life is like always studying for an exam that you never get the results for because the workload never disappears because you've always got the pile of scripts that you're supposed to read, the pile of books, the notes you should have written, the director whose work you should have looked at. There's always,
You're always
I mean,
behind. You feel you're always behind.
you are always behind. I am so behind now. You can never get on top of it. You can never keep up. You can never keep up on the email. So it's like you're always swatting. And within that, you might have had a really successful show a year before or 6 months before or yesterday. You're working on the next show that you've got problems with, or you never know when you make something if it's going to work. You know, I've made good shows that have been complete failures because it just
It's just
hasn't
how
been.
it is. It's just how it
And you've
is.
got to
Even top
live.
actors,
Yeah,
massive
of
mega
course.
actors have
Yeah.
that.
And
Yes.
you've got to find a way to live with it. So the destiny idea, that there's a path, that there's a straight line, it never feels like that. I'm about to launch a second season of a show, Red Eye, which was a big show for ITV in terms of audience numbers on its first season. And with one of the actors, the lead actor, I've said, look, I know we've made a really good show here. I can't tell you it's going to be successful.
'Cause
It
it's
may
just,
not be.
yeah.
Don't just enjoy this moment because we just don't know what will work.
No, you don't know. Tell me about LA. So, obviously here in LA, I met you through our kids
Yeah.
in nursery.
Yeah.
And we built an amazing friendship over the last many, many years. How's it going being here in LA? And because you were saying it's very different from working
Yeah, it
in
is.
the UK and working in LA. What are the differences?
So LA, I moved to LA when I knew I was coming off Doctor Who. So Doctor Who had been this, 6 years had dominated my life in the most magical way. Relationships that are the most critical and most important to me. I don't think there was ever a day I got more than 5 hours sleep throughout that period. It was where my body's retrained for that kind of rigorous workload because it was not just Doctor Who, it was like the hundreds of hours of television that were then coming through BBC Wales. And I knew I was going to leave the show, and Jane Tranter was also going to leave her job at the BBC. And we were talking about setting up a UK production company, which obviously eventually we did with Bad Wolf. And I had always wanted to come to America. And I joke about it, but I think there's a terrible truth to it that one of the treats I had as a kid was my mother would go to bingo and my dad and I would watch Dallas together as like this really secret little
I love Dallas.
guilty and I think I thought that was America.
Right.
And somewhere I'd always wanted to go to America, and it can't just be that. I think, I'd watched so much American television. I'd made some co-pros with HBO. And so we came to America to work at what was then BBC Worldwide Productions, the BBC's commercial arm in America. I don't know what really got me here. I think there was a bit of Dallas. I remember coming to the end of Doctor Who, being in a meeting about marketing. And I was in this meeting where someone suggested something and I immediately shut it down and I had all the reasons why. And I remember thinking, I've got to get out of here because I'm now closed-minded because I've done it for such a long time. I have a particular narrow view of what this now should be, and I'm going to take the oxygen out of the room. I need to do something else.
Space for more people to come through.
And I also, because initially Russell T Davies moved to LA to work, and we would have this conversation, which at the time I really believed, and now I don't. But at the time it was, we need to go somewhere where someone's going to say no to us. We know we need to start again. And then I realized a year into people saying no, I was like, I hate this. This is fucking terrible. Why do I want to, why am I putting myself through this? Because coming to America was different culture, different relationships.
And relationships is the key, isn't it?
Is the key, and you'll never catch up. I'm now 16 years into being here, and I love it. But I realize that the deep foundation building for relationship is probably in your 20s and 30s, which obviously was the UK for me. So anyway, here I am. That was the journey to be here.
And thoughts on the future from here?
Well, when Jane and I set up Bad Wolf, Jane returned to the UK and, is really the power behind that UK-based company. And to begin with, we were doing everything together. So I was flying into the UK a lot and we were EPing the shows together. And then that became unsustainable as the company with Jane grew and grew. And it also felt I needed a sea change because I can't remember which explorer it was. Someone else brighter than me will know. But there was an explorer who, when he arrived, burnt all the boats
Yeah.
because you have to stop looking back. And I think probably for the first 10 years of being here, I always had a foot in the old country and in America. I'm now much more streamlined in my UK work. So I have my key shows, Doctor Who, The War Between, Red Eye, I Hate Susie.
Yeah, so burn the bridges. I think it was William the Conqueror is what I heard, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, yeah. When he landed on the shores
Oh,
of
is
the
it?
UK,
Oh,
he
I
just said,
need to.
"Hey, we ain't going back." I heard you mention, or it was mentioned in a discussion you had. In fact, it was on another podcast that television isn't a place necessarily for blue collar or working class people. It doesn't feel attracting or open to them, so they're going to come in possibly feeling less than. I mean, I remember working in London and going into the city. It was where I got a job in the city. It sounds fancier than it was, but the financial centre, I had like a sales job. But I remember feeling like this colloquial dude from Manchester, and they all went to private school, posh Masons, and I just felt less and below everyone else, which actually made me work harder, which was good. But what's your thought process? And you told me a great story about Shonda this morning, about someone who is from a blue collar, from a working class background. You know, how should they see themselves? What should they do? What should their mentality be going into this environment where they feel a little bit out of it? Have you got any tips or hints or thoughts or?
So the conversation that you're referencing was Shonda Rhimes, who is a titan in the industry and creator of Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, Bridgerton, has this extraordinary company. She's African American woman. I don't think she was working class at all, but she was celebrating the anniversary of her company this year. And I read something probably on Instagram that she said, which was, there was never a room that I felt I shouldn't be in. And I absolutely loved that. I found it really inspiring and extraordinary, actually. And I kind of went away and I thought about that quote and feeling and how that might, or how did that apply to me. And I realized I also weirdly, and I don't know where this would come from, I also feel there isn't a room I shouldn't be in. But I am also very aware that there are many rooms I've been in my career where I'm uncomfortable. Even now, I'm not particularly always socially at ease, but I never think I shouldn't be in a room.
Yeah, so
I always want to be
Yeah.
where the conversation's happening. I'm not very good outside the door. I'm always like, what's happening there? What do I need to know about something?
Tell me about then. So this being in the room
Yeah.
is, even if you feel uncomfortable, it's good to be there. And that's obviously what you were obviously in these rooms, and you felt, I'm right to be in this room, but I feel uncomfortable here. And feeling uncomfortable, sort of, the growth happens being outside of your comfort zone. So is that something you've always done, is push yourself to move outside of your comfort zone? Or have you not even thought about it? You just
No, I
you
have
just
I have thought about it, but I'm not heroic enough to have been, oh yes, I've always pushed myself out of my comfort zone. I don't think that's a natural instinct. I think we all want to be comfortable. And I think the older you get, the more you need that comfort. So it's something I am conscious of. I know there are things I should have done that I haven't done because I've just been a bit anxious. Nothing big, but the dread of going to a meeting or the dread of going to something socially that could be helpful or important, where you'd rather stay at home on the sofa in your pajamas. I think that's a very human instinct.
So if there's someone out there thinking, okay, how do I get myself moving? Have you got a tip or a thought process?
Well, I mean, looking back at it, which is this podcast is making me do, I don't think I have anything new to say, but I think the things that I would hold as true are, when you're young, you think everything has to happen immediately. And it's good to have that energy and that instinct, but actually if it doesn't happen immediately, that's okay. It can take a few years. So I think be impatient because it gives you a drive, but don't think it's got it. Oh, if it hasn't happened in the time frame I've imagined, it's never happening. So I think you have to learn that. I think having a sense of humor has really helped me.
Being able to have a good hoot.
A good hoot.
Apparently you're famous for the
I am
word
famous
hoot.
for hooting.
Yeah.
I think you really need that
Yes, I agree.
in any job,
Fun.
but particularly in this. I don't know if I'm that good at fun. I think that
You're a lot of fun. You are a lot of fun.
Okay.
So I'm going to give a quick view. I see you. I see you as this very hardworking person. So I see
Yeah.
you as this. What you're amazing at is when you're there, you're there. You're present.
Oh, good.
You're in the room, and you're hilarious, and you're brilliant to
Good.
be with.
You can always find the funny in the tragic, I think. And that's a key thing in drama, in the kind of programs I'm drawn to, is you flip between, because that's life. You can flip between tragedy into humor. I think what it's also about is having a perspective about it. You know, on one hand, we're not trying to cure cancer. On the other hand, we're not plucking chickens in a factory. We're okay. And I take the work really seriously. But I think you have to have a perspective about it. I think you have to work hard. I think in any job now, it's too tough. Everyone has to really commit. I'm still intrigued by the work smarter rather than harder. I'm not quite sure how you work out which line you're on there. But I think that would be what I would be saying is have the energy of youth, but know things might take some time. Have perspective and a sense of humor about what you're doing. Work hard. I have a son who's 15. I don't know at all what he's going to want to do. He's displaying nothing that I can grasp onto. And I don't really care what he does. If he wanted to be a barista or a knife sharpener or an academic or whatever, I would be happy
If he's happy.
if he was really passionate about
Yes.
it, because it's too hard in any job if you've got the luxury of, you've got to pay your bills, but if you can find something that you love, you can get through almost anything.
And I think you have done that. And so I truly believe you are living your best life. I think this life.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we've talked about this coming here, and I've pushed back a bit with you because there's no way that schoolgirl on the bus at 14, 15 could have ever thought this was possible. That I could have got to LA, that I could have worked in television, that I could have supported myself and my family through that work, that I could have met such brilliant people along the way who far outclass me. Look at my marvelous husband, in terms of success.
Julian is up for an Oscar.
He's the person that you should really be interviewing.
I am going to interview Julian.
Because he came to America and had to completely start again as a production sound mixer.
Yeah.
And to have been nominated for the work of, he's a sound mixer on Avatar, that's the real, I look at him, that's the success, that's the journey I can really recognise.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone loves Julian, don't they? What a beautiful soul.
Yeah.
And you can see that within Hux.
He is.
That sort of, that mix of both of you, which is amazing. So, Julie Gardner, MBE, thank you so much for being on.
My pleasure. Lovely to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You always hear this on every podcast, but it really will help to get the best guests. Can you like and subscribe? Or if you love today's guest, please share it with someone who you feel it might resonate with. You've been listening to Best Life Podcast. Until next time, take care, keep exploring and living your best life. Ba-da-ba-ba.